From the Oklahoma newsroom, this is a sports update. I'm Jenny Carlson here with Kyle Fredrickson and Jason Kersey. We're here to talk about another play that changed it all, guys. A year ago, Jason chronicled a huge play in Bedlam that changed the game and the outcome for both OU and OSU as that season went along. And now, Kyle, we're back a year later with another momentous play in Bedlam, that being Tyreek Hill's punt return. You have got a huge piece about this running in the Sunday Oklahoma now News OK. You reported this extensively. What was the most surprising, interesting thing you found out along the way?
Well, it was definitely a fun story to write, just being that this is a play and a moment in OSU football history that's so polarizing. It changed so much. I think what stood out the most in terms of the reporting for me that I enjoyed was learning some of the intricacies of the play that we didn't before. When something like this happens in that setting, you know, we're writing about Tyreek Hill, we're writing about Mason Rudolph. We don't really get to talk to the other people who were nearly as important or more important in the play, like Jed Barnett, OU's punter. What was going through his mind at this time? Jordan Stearns, who gets the running into the kicker penalty, but then makes a huge block on Barnett on the second attempt. All of that was really cool to hear and really recreate a side of the play that a lot of fans might not know about.
Yeah, and I think, Jason, you sort of found out some of the same things last year when you wrote about the near interception by Justin Gilbert that ended up being not an interception, then OU goes down and scores.
Yeah, and what's kind of cool about this story is it's different in that it is a momentous play, but the play that I wrote about was much more, it was easy to overlook. It was a play that people really could easily have forgotten about because, you know, 2 or 3 plays, 4 plays later, whatever, Blake Bell threw the touchdown to Jalen Saunders, and that was the play most people remembered. Or they remembered Eric Stryker getting almost tripped by an OSU cheerleader,
right,
or those sorts of things. People didn't as clearly remember that moment because it sort of went by so fast. I mean, that play wasn't even reviewed. It sort of was just kept going.
Right.
This play, it's impossible to forget. I mean, I think that everybody's going to remember that play for a long time. I know that I'll remember where I was standing when Tyreek Hill ran right past me, you know, in the end zone. So, I mean, I think it's different, but that's what kind of makes it cool.
Yeah, definitely different circumstances there. But I think as you wrote a year ago, Jason, obviously, as with this piece, your piece ran right before the season began, so we were basically looking at how things changed in the bowl season, the off season, heading into the season. We are again, and clearly you have no way to know how the seasons are going to play out for both of these teams, but Kyle, this was definitely a play that had so many ramifications. What tops your head and just how much that play changed for the Cowboys?
Well, I mean, when we think about where this team would be had they lost that game as compared to where they are now, I mean, it's a night and day difference. Starting with the head coach, Mike Gundy, you know, after this game, the very last question that was asked in the press conference by our John Helsley was something for Gundy to reflect on, blocking out the outside noise. Is this vindication, is how John put it. And Gundy spent the next 2 or 3 minutes basically going on a long speech about how much he loves OSU, how committed he is to the university, and that really started the ball rolling. From there, he reconciled his relationship with Boone Pickens. He was taking selfies with reporters before the Cactus Bowl. He suddenly became this figure who was on a hot seat, you know, the student newspaper calling for his job at one point, to being back to that lovable Gundy that fans, you know, had grown to love over his 10 years of being the coach. So that's just one aspect of it. You know, you can look at the rise of Mason Rudolph, getting another start, playing against Washington, and defeating a defense with 3 future first-round picks. He enters this season as the unquestioned starter, and that might not happen had the Cowboys lost that game with J.W. Walsh returning. So among the storylines, I mean, we could go on and on about all the different things that changed, but more so than anything, it's given OSU fans a lot of excitement and a lot of hope moving forward.
What about from the OU perspective, Jason? I mean, Kyle mentions Mike Gundy right away. Obviously, that play, because of Bob Stoops' decision to actually allow that play to happen, it's changed a lot about Bob Stoops among OU fans, right?
Right. Well, yeah, it definitely did. I mean, the decision to re-kick to Tyreek Hill was so. I think people are so confused by it because I think a lot of people thought it was a no-brainer. Of course, you don't re-kick to Tyreek Hill, but he decided to. So that I think calls into question his competence to a lot of people. Yeah. But then on top of that, you have the fact that they'd already lost 3 games that season. They'd been embarrassed at home by Baylor. They'd already lost a couple of home games before that, and they never lost at home. Before this last season, they very rarely lost at home.
Yeah.
And so I think that it really does completely change the way that fans look at Bob Stoops, because if OU finds a way to win that game, they get Trevor Knight and Sterling Shepard back, they go maybe to the Alamo Bowl, play UCLA and win, then maybe the fans aren't as antsy. That's another 10-win season. They're 10-3, as opposed to 8-5. I think that it definitely changed a lot. But it's funny to think back about last year. We were saying all that the play changed. Last year, the play changed. Mike Gundy would have won 2 out of 3 Big 12 championships. He would have beaten OU 2 out of 3 years. He would have. So you wonder how much of that sort of seeped over into the next season when we're talking about his attitude and his being upset and everything. So these plays do have a tendency to really just massively alter things, and it's all one play.
And I thought it was interesting, Bob Stoops' comments going into that bowl game against Clemson, that there was a bit of a hangover for them. So I mean, that shows you when you end your season with that type of performance, it does reverberate into the next year.
Well, and I'm curious too, and we may not know this for a while, guys, but you talk about we're sitting here on the day that the preseason poll comes out in the Big 12, which doesn't determine anything. I mean, a year ago, TCU was nowhere near the top of the preseason poll. They go out and tie for the league. This year we see OU 3rd, OSU 4th, but I think a lot of people around here, see OSU sort of on the rise, OU maybe treading a little more water. Who knows where this ends? But then you think about things like recruiting and perceptions that are out there amongst fans, recruits, pundits, how that all plays out. I mean, it's kind of interesting to see the recruiting. It feels like both schools have done a decent job in recruiting, but obviously some good momentum for the Cowboys this summer for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And the recruiting class they have now, they've got an Elite 11 quarterback. They've stole a commit from Texas, a 4-star Darian Daniels, who had decommitted after that Bedlam game, after seeing really what the Cowboys were all about. And even think about the fan perspective. OSU right now is on pace to possibly break its season ticket record that it set just 2 years ago. That has everything to do with Mason Rudolph's play. And that all stems back to that Bedlam game and how OSU is able to turn the momentum on that season.
Well, and you think about recruiting, Jason, with the Sooners. I mean, a lot of that is hinged on the fact they've got some new coaches, but part of the reason they've got some new coaches is that end-of-the-year disappointment.
Yeah, and I think that Josh Heupel and Jay Norvell were probably on their way out regardless. I think that it would have taken a crazy performance in the Bedlam game and in the bowl game for those guys to be back. I think Bob Stoops was going to make a change there anyway. But yeah, I mean, the new coaches have certainly helped with recruiting, and they've recruited pretty well the last few months. But there's still sort of this lingering. I think a lot of recruits don't quite know what direction OU's headed in. I think a lot of recruits, like a lot of us, wonder if there's another bad season or another disappointing season. Is that going to be the end of the Bob Stoops era? And really, that all started with that play.
It's crazy, yeah. And I think about the flip side of that, Kyle. Mike Yursich might not be the offensive coordinator at OSU had they lost that game. Now here, I mean, all these threads, you guys found him obviously last year with that near interception by Gilbert, and now the punt return by Tyreek Hill. Who knows? What are we going to be writing about next year? It's anybody's guess, right, guys?
Well, really, since 2010, every Bedlam game except one has been fantastic.
Yeah.
2011. When OSU routed OU, that game's sort of forgettable for everybody, I think. But for these other ones, they were so exciting. They were won, late in the game, close games. So there's no reason to believe that we won't see that again.
Right, and I thought it was interesting talking with Jed Barnett. Obviously he wanted the Sooners to win that game more than anything, but I asked him, in terms of Bedlam being something that the state can be proud of and being a rivalry that we can get excited about, that's got to be something that he can, at least agree that's a good thing for the state. And he said that. He said absolutely. He's a guy who grew up in Washington, where the Washington State rivalry really hasn't been very competitive. So to have a game like this that's going to be competitive year in and year out, if we get these plays that change everything, it seems like year after year, in a state where the Thunder is really king, I think that Bedlam football still reigns supreme.
So clear your schedules next year, guys. Who knows who's going to be writing the play that changed it all. All right, thanks, guys. Sure, stay with the best coverage team anywhere at newsok.com and every day in the Oklahoman.